Think of America as a house with a very specific floor plan. On one side, a room entirely for government and our laws. On the other, a room strictly for religion. And between them, an impenetrable barrier right down the middle. For over 200 years, this invisible wall has been the common understanding. President Thomas Jefferson championed this idea. He argued that keeping these rooms completely sealed off from one another was the only way to protect both. Jefferson called this the separation of church and state. While you won't actually find those exact words in the U.S. Constitution, the idea comes straight from the highest law in the land. This historical document shows the First Amendment. It lays down a clear rule. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. In plain English, the government cannot pick a favorite faith and cannot force anyone to practice a religion they don't believe in. Right now, this invisible wall is at the center of a massive national debate. A lot of Americans believe this barrier guarantees our freedom to believe whatever we choose. But a highly influential political movement argues that this wall is doing the opposite and actually holding the country back. In April of 2026, the President's Religious Liberty Commission held its final hearing at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C. The leaders on this commission proposed a totally different way to look at the relationship between faith and government. They argued that the government shouldn't sit on the sidelines. Instead, they believe the state should be an active partner that promotes religion as something good for the public. The chairman of the commission, Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, took this a step further. He stated that the entire idea of a necessary separation between church and state is a lie. In his words, the biggest lie told since the founding of America. The commission members explained that they want this change because they feel the current system is broken. They argued that in recent years, the legal system has been used as a weapon to punish people of faith simply for living according to their deeply held beliefs. To back this up, they pointed to moments in history where religious conviction drove positive change. They noted that during the civil rights movement, such as the 1960 Greensboro sit-ins shown here, churches served as the organizing hubs, and scripture gave leaders the moral foundation to fight for equality. Ultimately, this movement doesn't want to tear down the entire house. Instead, they want to open a permanent door in that wall. They want to ensure that religious values can freely cross over and influence how the government runs. So what does opening that door look like in everyday life? We can see it happening right now, starting in public school classrooms. First, several states have passed laws requiring public schools to display the 10 Commandments on classroom walls. In Texas alone, thousands of public schools have already put these religious texts on display. Second, there is a massive push for school voucher programs. These allow parents to take the taxpayer money normally reserved for public schools and use it to pay tuition at private, often heavily religious, schools. And third, religious healthcare providers are going to court. Groups of Catholic nurses and nuns are suing states for the right to operate medical facilities strictly according to their faith, even if that means refusing certain treatments mandated by state law. When you put these three examples together, you see a clear shift. The goal is to move the government away from acting as a neutral referee and turn it into a legal and financial sponsor of religious practice. But not everyone agrees with this shift. Groups like Americans United for the Separation of Church and State argue that knocking holes in this wall directly threatens our democratic system. Their concern comes down to basic math. In a country filled with hundreds of different faiths, connecting the government to religion usually means the government ends up promoting the beliefs of the majority while leaving everyone else out in the cold. We heard exactly this fear from Hindu American leaders at the recent commission hearing. While Hinduism has a rich history in the United States, representatives pointed to recent attacks on Hindu temples, like the one similar to this mandir, and explained that their community feels an increasing sense of fear and intolerance. For minority groups, the fear is very practical. If the government uses its power to explicitly favor one specific religion, people of other faiths worry they will eventually lose the freedom to practice their own beliefs safely and openly. Which brings us right back to our house. The argument we are having as a country is whether we keep a solid barrier or an open door between these two rooms. The outcome of this debate will decide our shared future. It will determine whether blending church and state gives Americans the freedom to live out their convictions, or whether it strips that freedom away from anyone who happens to believe something different.